Hi, everyone. We're here with Laura Wise, and she's going to be walking us through her tremendous 12 years of being a successful freelancer and hopping from different industries and also different challenges and different opportunities, as well as how to tackle freelancing in a recession. All right, Laura, I'll have you take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for having me here. I just got a notification that my internet is unstable, so if for any reason I start to cut out, please flag me down and let me know. But this presentation is all about rethinking work, and it's about freelancing in the gig economy. As you said, my name is Laura K. Wise. I will introduce myself as we get further into the presentation. But I also want this to be a conversation. So if anyone has any questions or anything like that, please feel free to put them in the chat. And Kristen, if you wouldn't mind, because I'm going to be like looking at notes, just flag me if a question happens to come in so I can like address it. But let's just jump in. Okay, so I want to start with a quick story. So after I graduated from college, I graduated from Hampton University in 2009. It was a dream of mine to work in the fashion industry. As you can see by all of the things that I have on here, that was my version of fashion in 2010. So I moved across the country from Virginia to California to pursue more schooling at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. After I graduated, I landed my dream job as a designer for an apparel company. It was fabulous work. I was designing clothes for some of the brands that I love and wear still today. And I was just having a ball, living my best LA life. And it was the dream until it wasn't. The company that I was working for never fully recovered after the financial crisis of 2008. So unfortunately, I was the first in and I was the first out. So I was let go from that role, which really kind of sent me into a spiral of a depression because, you know, it was a really cruel awakening to the world of like, who lays off a 23-year-old, you know, a company that wants to save money is who lays off a 23-year-old. So I was in LA by myself, you know, I had to pay my rent. I had to figure out how I was going to survive. And I just felt a lot of stress during this period of my life. So soon after I was laid off and was starting to figure things out, a friend basically hooked me up with some work, but it wasn't permanent work. It was project-based. So I was working with an agency in the LA area that specialized in working with movie studios and on retail spaces. And I started working with them as a freelancer. So I basically started freelancing before I ever knew what the term freelancing meant. I just knew that they were going to pay me and that I had to pay my bills. And that was in 2010, and I have been freelancing ever since. Okay, so we're gonna fast forward to today. Today it is 2022 for a few more months. So who am I? Again, I'm Laura K. Wise. I am a writer, I am a speaker, I am a content creator. I am dedicated to helping women primarily, but everyone in general, rethink work. This concept of work, I think, is changing all around us. It is changing very quickly. And I have really committed myself to wrapping my head around that and kind of sharing the things that I'm finding with other people. So while I have done many, many, many things in my life, and if you go to my website and read my about page, you'll get a taste of some of those many things that I've done. But all of those things have led me here today, but there are four that I think that are really the most important and that are most relevant to the subject at hand. So one, I have run my consulting business, Content-Wise Communications, full-time for the past 3.5 years, which is an accomplishment as a small business owner because it is hard out here to make this stuff work, right? Two, I am the founder of the Black Female Freelance Network, also known as the BFF Network. We are a community of Black women freelancers. We are sharing tips, tools, resources, and stories, but most importantly, creating a hiring pipeline for Black women who are interested in freelancing. I also currently sit on the board of Freelancers Union. Freelancers Union is the largest and fastest growing organization representing the almost 60 million independent workers in the United States, which that number is only growing. But most importantly, as I said from my opening story, I've been a freelancer for 12 years. And that has looked differently over those 12 years. Sometimes it's been part-time, sometimes it's been full-time out of necessity. Sometimes it's just been a gig here or there, but it is something that I have done for quite a while. So I'm excited to be here with you all today. Okay, so we are going to have a conversation in 3 chapters today. We are going to take a look at freelancing from 3 perspectives. We're going to look at it globally, the freelance economy. Why will freelancing be a key in this concept that we're calling the future of work? Like, what's going on there? We're going to talk about freelancing regionally. We're going to talk about the freelance community. That is you and me and all of us that make up this space. And I'm going to be sharing an overview of a blueprint that I have created to help freelancers start and or scale a profitable freelance business. And third, we're going to be talking about freelancing locally, which is your freelance business. How do we manage our own finances in our own freelance businesses? And we are in a period right now where inflation is high, where there is a recession coming. So they say in every headline, that you're going to read every day. So I want to give you 4 steps that I'm personally taking right now, but that any freelancer can also take to prepare for an economic downturn. So by the end of this presentation, and this conversation, because I do want it to be a conversation, I want to make sure that I am very clear in that you all are taking away, again, where freelancing is headed right now. If you are starting or scaling your business, what are some really critical things that you need to think about to start or scale your business? And again, how do you then protect that income that you're making with your freelance business in times of economic downturn? Okay, so the global outlook. Freelancing will be key in the future of work. Have you all heard the term the future of work before? I feel like everyone has at this point. So what I think is most important is first, let's define that. What does the future of work even mean? So according to the Gartner Glossary, the future of work describes changes in how work will get done over the next decade, influenced by technological, generational, and social shifts. This is a really, really hot topic right now. There are articles over every platform, on TikTok, on Twitter. People are talking about this. As I was preparing for this conversation, I also found a statistic that kind of supports this that I think is really interesting, that I think is going to set the stage for where we are going. So this is from an organization called Flexible, which is a freelance platform online that hooks up freelancers and people looking for freelancers. And it says that freelancers will soon make up the majority of the US workforce. Over the next few years, 52% of the US adult workforce is expected to work as a freelancer or have experience working as an independent contractor. But why is freelancing growing so quickly? Okay, so this is where I have to make a confession. I am a total nerd when it comes to researching all things freelance, remote work, future of work, all of those things, because they are, I think, just so indicative of, again, where things are headed. And I think that in order to stay ahead of the opportunities, we have to pay attention and see what's coming at us. So as freelancers, we know how to position ourselves. So in all of the research that I've done, I've kind of narrowed this growth into 4 main factors that I think are the things that are causing this growth of the freelance industry. Okay, so first, flexibility. I think this is kind of first and foremost. For so long, society has kind of adopted this belief that our work lives and our personal lives are separate. But after the pandemic, this is no longer the case. I think people everywhere are craving a flexibility that we need to help us build the lives that we want to live. Work sometimes interferes with personal sometimes interferes with work. And I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice if we pretend that those things are not one and the same. I think reason number two, from things that I've read, are inflation and just general rising cost. You know, as years go on and as our economy continues to grow, specifically in the United States, but also in other countries, people literally need to make more money to survive. Having one source of income is unfortunately not enough anymore. And I think that in the future, it will become critical for more of us to have more sources of incomes to be able to better support ourselves. All right, reason number three, I think, is the rise of mental health and mental health awareness in our world right now. You know, as a global society, I think we're beginning to see and acknowledge the realities of mental health. And thank goodness, because it's about time. You know, these are very real parts of our lives. Stress and anxiety affect us, and we can't pretend that they don't. Work in a traditional sense has been a place where there are such demanding deadlines, where you may face some type of microaggression in the office. And these things take a toll on us over time. So as mental health continues to trend, I think so will work options that support a more healthy and balanced lifestyle for all of us. And fourth, I think the fourth thing that is really fueling this is the talent shortage. There is a huge talent shortage happening right now, specifically in tech sectors and in very technical fields. But, you know, the benefit of this freelancer boom is not just for freelancers, it's for companies as well. Companies are finding value in hiring freelancers, contractors, consultants to fill these critical gaps on their teams that they don't have full-time employees to fill. And if we are completely honest, which we have to be honest, companies like this because it also saves them money because they don't have to pay for benefits for full-time employees. So in order to maximize our chances of running these profitable freelance businesses that are going to be booming in the future because of all of the reasons that I just stated, it is important to have a plan. A plan is so incredibly important. And that is going to take us into the second chapter of this conversation, which is the regional outlook. This is the freelance community. This is a blueprint for building or scaling your own profitable freelance business. So I found this quote, again, as I was preparing for this presentation, that I love. I've heard it before, and you likely have heard it before too, but I just want to bring it up and just put it out there. Good fortune is what happens when opportunity meets with planning. And that is from Thomas Edison. Now, I will say, I want to give a disclaimer. I am a creative person. If my brain thinks in shapes and colors, I never liked math. It wasn't my thing. I'm not like a technical person. But in my freelance business, I have had to learn the importance of taking the art and making it science, because that is a process that you can make repeatable, that you can sell to your clients, that will continue to get you more clients. And if it's just all over the place, it's hard to make sense of it if it's all over the place, right? So what I'm going to be talking about next is kind of this blueprint of me taking my own process and really making it more of a science. So if anything I've said so far is like pique your interest, your next question might be, well, how do I start? Or what is this process? So the process that I've created is the Freelancer Blueprint. And this is inspired by my 12 years so far as a freelancer. And this is from all of the mistakes that I've made. This is from a lot of the conversations and problem-solving sessions that I've had with other freelancers. I created this blueprint to help other people in places where I needed help when I was early on in my freelance career. So this blueprint is broken down into two main parts. Part one is free, F-R-E-E, which is all about the mindset of freelancing. I think that we can't attack anything and not think about the mindset first. If we say that we want to save money, but we're not consciously thinking about saving money and we just continue to spend money, then our mindset is not in the right place to save money, right? So I think in order to freelance, to understand how to build a successful business, you have to understand some of the uncertainty that comes along with the field of freelancing. I mean, it's very important. But I will also say the second part of this is Lancer. Now, these are all about the skill set of freelancing. And these are kind of the technical things, the on the ground things that you need to learn to make sure that your business is set up, that you have this plan, that you have this blueprint so that you can move forward. So I've spent some time today kind of in the first part of this conversation talking about the mindset of freelancing and talking about the economy and talking about how things are changing, which will serve as our free conversation today. So I really want to focus the next few minutes on Lancer and those 6 steps that are really going to help to strengthen or start your freelance business. Okay, so the first one, L. L is for legal. Legal structure is very important for all freelancers. Once you decide that you're ready to launch your freelance business, you must also decide how you would like to structure your work entity. What you decide absolutely has tax liability implications, so it's important that you are informed and that you choose wisely. Now, I am not an accountant, and I am not going to talk about all the structures because that is not my job today. But you can find all these things on the IRS website, which is going to give you the best information. So whether you're just starting or whether you're scaling, you always need to think about this. For example, I've been freelancing for 12 years. I didn't incorporate my business until 4 years ago. And about 2 years ago, I changed my standing in terms of how I'm classified. This is an important key, no matter what space you are in your business, that you always want to continue to think about this, because again, it has to deal with taxes, and freelancing is all about getting your money and keeping your money. So if you can find ways to minimize your taxes through your legal structure, that's something you should do some research about. Okay, next is A. The A in Lancer stands for accounts. Once you start freelancing, it's really important to get your money set up correctly. How are you going to get paid? Are you going to get paid hourly, flat rate per project, or on retainer? And when you do get paid in your freelance business, where are you putting your money? Make sure you set up a business bank account early. I will tell you, I have run into many, many freelancers who have years and years of experience who ask me to pay them via Zelle. And I don't want to pay anyone via Zelle, because as a freelancer who can also write things off on my taxes, I needed to come out of my business bank account. So I can't Zelle you from like my personal bank account. So I think no matter what stage you are in your freelance business, it is important to think about, how do you get paid easily? If people want to pay you, how do you make it as easy as possible for people to pay you? Also, if you're thinking about freelancing full-time, because there are different levels of freelancing, you can freelance part-time, kind of like a side gig, you can freelance full-time. Don't forget about benefits. I would say the perceived access, or really lack thereof, lack of access to benefits is the #1 deterrent I hear from so many women when it comes to freelancing, as to why they don't want to do it. But you can secure your own benefits. So that's important to think about. And that is something that you want to set up early. So when you're in the midst of working with your clients, this is not something you want to think about in case you get sick and need to go to the hospital. So that is a foundational piece of your business. Make sure you think about business. Make sure you think about accounts. Okay, next is N for network. Now that you're starting to freelance, how are people supposed to know? You have to tell them. Tapping into your network is going to be such a rich source of clientele for freelancers, new and seasoned. In the BFF network, one of the greatest questions I get is, it's hard for me to find clients. And I will tell you personally, from 12 years of freelance experience, that probably 90% of my business comes from my network. So making sure that your network knows what you do, how you do it, how to reach you, how to refer other people to you is going to be incredibly important. How you choose to do that is, you can market on Instagram, you can do this on LinkedIn, you can send personal emails to people, but make sure that you let your network know what you're up to. Okay, next is C, which is actually 3 C's, but clarity, confidence, and consistency. And honestly, this should be #1, but because of the way that the word works, it's not #1. But clarity is the most important piece. It's the foundation, because if you are not clear on what you want to do, you can't go out and do it. You have to get super clear on how you want to show up as a freelancer in the world. So I have a couple of questions that I like to give to new freelancers who are trying to think through these things. And those are pretty simple. What is your top skill? What are you really, really good at? What is your passion? Where do your skill and your passion meet in the middle in a place that someone will pay you for it? That's the key. What will people pay you for? Next, you really have to define your target market. And then you have to identify yourself. You have to identify your own freelancer platform. How much time do you want to dedicate to your freelance business? How much extra money would you like to make from your freelance business? When you are able to answer all of those questions, you have a good foundation for moving forward and for marketing yourself as a freelancer. Once you're crystal clear, confidence and consistency are next. You have to believe in your work and you have to develop a plan to stay consistent in pitching and marketing and delivering excellent service and final product to every client that you work with. Okay, the E in Lancer stands for evidence. So every freelancer needs an online portfolio. This feels very simple, but it is incredibly important. You need a digital footprint. It does not have to be fancy, shiny with bells and whistles and videos and things flying in. It could be a one-pager online, but make sure that you keep track of your work, track your wins so that you can easily pop that to someone if someone asks for examples of your work. Very, very important. Make sure that you have an online portfolio and that you update it. And the final step is R, which is really just rinse and repeat. This is where your practice of your work starts to become a habit. This is where you just keep going and keep doing the thing, and your freelance business will grow over time with that clarity, confidence, and consistency. So once the foundation of your freelance business is established through some of the steps that we talked about today, you have to be prepared for anything financially. Again, freelancing, the whole goal of this space is to make money. This is your chosen method of making money to support yourself or to supplement other income that you're making. So how then do you keep as much money as possible? How are you being smart with your money so that you are able to maximize your money? So this leads us to the third and the final chapter of our conversation today, which is the local outlook. This is your freelance business. And I want to give you 4 steps that you can take to prepare for an economic downturn or a looming recession, as the economists like to remind us so often. Okay, here is a quote that is really interesting that I want to share. So it says that 18.4% of private sector businesses in the US fail within the first year. After 5 years, 49.7% have faltered, while after 10 years, 65.5% of businesses have failed. And that is a stat that I found on LendingTree, which is a financial institution here in the US. And it's really important to remember that as a freelancer, you are a small business owner. So these numbers apply to us as freelancers. This is not to scare anyone, but it is to say that there are a lot of things that can go wrong. So all of the ways that we can mitigate and financially prepare ourselves for success in our freelance business is going to be incredibly successful. So I want to give you the 4 steps that I'm personally taking that I recommend for other freelancers to take as well to make sure that you are maximizing your revenue that you are earning in your freelance business. Okay, first, starts with getting our spending under control. So again, I believe that all work, whether you are a full-time employee, whether you're a freelancer or a volunteer, boils down to money management because we all have to make money to survive. But once we make the money, what do we do with it? So at this season of my life, I am again 12 years into my freelance career. There is a recession looming, so they say. The number one thing that I'm prioritizing right now is really getting my spending under control. If you are a freelancer right now, this is your friendly reminder to do a budget audit. If you have unused expenses that you're no longer using, cut those. If you have subscriptions that you're no longer needing, get rid of them. If you're eating out at restaurants 5 nights a week or ordering Uber Eats 5 nights a week, cut that to 3. Every little bit helps. And, there are so many different thoughts and schools of thought when it comes to money management, and like Dave Ramsey versus, don't drink Starbucks, whatever. The point is, you have to cut your things back. You have to cut things back to make room for what is unknown and what is potentially to come. Step 2 is really to save as much money as you possibly can. Having cash on hand right now is more important than ever. So this is another step that I'm taking to get really serious about saving. While it's challenging as a freelancer to manage every single dollar that we make, it also gives us a lot of control to move money where we see fit. And that means that we can save chunks of money as they come in from different projects. We've seen the headlines. They say that inflation is rising, but what does that mean? As a freelancer, it means that for you, jobs might be harder to come by in this season, which means that money might not flow in the way that it once did. So if you are being very intentional about thinking about your budget, about saving as much as possible, you will have the cash reserves that you need in case your work slows down in a period of economic downturn. Okay, step number 3, pay down your debt, which is like, dun, dun, dun. I know that paying down debt is not a quick or an easy process. I know from experience, I'm still paying down my own debt. But if you have a choice of buying more things and paying for things that you have already bought, in this season, it's really important to pay down that debt. Again, freelance jobs are becoming, or could potentially become, I'm not going to say they will become, but they could become slower, right? So if you don't have as many jobs coming in, I also don't want freelancers to be stuck with the stress of having a lot of debt on top of trying to survive just throughout this season. So definitely pay down your debt. And 4, I think the last step and kind of recommendation I have in this kind of season and how to weather this season is to look to land retainer clients. So I think one of the biggest benefits of freelancing for me is flexibility, but it's also its biggest challenge, and that is potentially a lack of consistent work. Once your business is, up and running and well-oiled, I think that you'll find finding new and retainer clients isn't as difficult as it can be earlier on in your freelance career. But again, it is important to think about that, especially in a time like this. A strategy that I found that is really helpful when it comes to landing consistent work is finding work on retainer with agencies. At any given time, agencies are working with several different clients and are always in need of freelance talent. And this goes back to the very beginning of my presentation in 2010, when I was laid off. I went to go work with an agency. And although that wasn't my full-time job, it got me through to the next season of my life. And that is what I needed at that time. So agencies are always a great place to look. Once you've established a great relationship with an agency, there's a good chance that they will reach out to you again and again and again, because they need help with all these projects that they're working on. They need talent that they can trust more than anything. So those are my 4 steps of the things that I am personally taking that I recommend to you all as well, to make sure that you are keeping all of the freelance money that you are building and scaling in your freelance businesses. Okay, so we're going to do a quick recap. So again, we have talked about today freelancing from the macro to the micro. So on a large scale, we've talked about freelancing globally, the freelance economy, and why freelancing is part of the future of work. We have also talked about freelancing regionally, and what does that look like for our freelance community? What does it look like for us to build businesses that are strong and successful and also profitable, which is the most important? And third, locally, we have looked at your personal freelance business, and I've given you a few steps that I think are really important for maximizing your revenue and keeping your revenue in this season. So I thank you for your time today. I thank you for listening to me for these few minutes. And my request of you is that I would love to connect. I have put 3 QR codes that you can just put your phone up if you choose, and I can send these out after as well. But first is my newsletter. No spam, I promise. I do not send regular communications, even through the newsletter. Only when there's something important or an announcement coming out will I send something out. But I just want to keep in touch with as many freelancers as possible, so I can also learn what people are going through and how I can support through all of the ways that I'm involved in freelance communities. The second code is my digital store or digital products. I've written a couple of ebooks that I think are really helpful for freelancers. One of those is the Clarity Workbook, which I went over a few of those questions in the Freelancer Blueprint section, but it just really helps you if you're a new freelancer, get super clear on how am I presenting myself? What am I telling people that I do? How do I share this with my network? And third is Instagram, because Instagram is my favorite social media platform. It has a link in bio where you can contact me in all the other places where I am in the world, on YouTube and watch my YouTube videos. I have a podcast. So all those other things can be found through that link as well. And that is it. I thank you for your time. And if there are any questions, I would love to answer them. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great, Laura. Thank you so much for doing this. I actually don't want to, I'll let other people kind of jump in any second here, but if you're thinking about some questions you might have, I'm gonna selfishly kick off with one. And that is in the era of recession or what, and I don't necessarily get too worried about words, whatever the word recession means, I don't really know, but everything is sort of impacts people locally, like you said. I love the way you put that. Are there in terms of finding work or even just bonding with other freelancers, whatever it is, do you have some go-to groups that you're in or things you can refer people to? Because I think in when things get a little bit scary out there, it's always good to have friends, right? So if you got some of those, if you get anything that off the top of your head that you're like, hey, this is a good place to be.
Yeah, there's a ton. One of the things on my site, and I point to that because I'm not going to remember everything that's on that list, but I think I've listed like 38 places where you can find freelance gigs online. And some of the places that I find the most valuable when it comes to community and like potential job opportunities are Facebook groups. Like there are tons of Facebook groups that have thousands and thousands of members that are always putting out opportunities, right? And I think that is a great place to go to find community, but also for active leads consistently. There are the same on Twitter. There are certain groups on Twitter that, are communities where they're just kind of spitting out these things and they're forming communities around freelancing and solopreneurship. So I think just plugging in with those based on whatever your favorite, again, social media platform is, I don't think we all need to be on all platforms. I think we need to be on the ones that work for us. So these groups are on every single platform.
Yeah, great. Okay, yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Laura, I've got a question. I was curious about whether or not you use any high yield savings accounts on the topic of money and being smart with it, because that's something that I hear a lot of people talk about, and I would love your expert opinion.
Yeah, so I don't think it's crazy anymore. I used to think it was a little weird, but I have like 7 bank accounts, and because they're all for different things. So I have my business bank account and my personal bank account through Capital One, which I think Capital One 360 has great accounts. But then I also have my savings account, which is my slush fund in case anything happens. I have this money set to the side. I have that in Ally Bank, which is an online only bank. There are no retail branches. And I like that for several reasons. One, because I can't easily access the money. I don't need to be able to touch the money. It needs to be away in the corner so I can't get to it. And that's a high yield savings. Again, it's kind of like online only, and I kind of transfer in and out if I happen to need to do so. But that is actually my favorite account right now for high yield.
That's, yeah, I had heard of that. It's just like one of the things that keeps popping up. However, I guess some people are quite nervous about the fact that they have no brick and mortar locations. Was that something that ever gave you pause, or are you not worried about that for some other reason that I should learn about?
I'm not absolutely not worried about that. I mean, you can get a debit card if you want, and they do have like partnerships like with other like banks if you want to go and like use your debit card. But I have a savings account there. And I think because they don't have brick and mortar, that's what gives them the flexibility to give you like this high yield on the money, because they're not paying for all the things that like your Bank of America or Capital One is going to be paying for. So
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
All right. Frieza, Lauren, thanks so much for coming. Do you have any questions? Feel free to just unmute yourself and chime in.
For sure. I did have a question in terms of the accountant. Is your accountant specifically targeting freelancers, and do you find accountant who primarily works for freelancers someone who is your ideal candidate that you want to work with, or do you think any accountant would be great?
I mean, I definitely think you have to find the right fit for you. My accountant is a young woman. She used to work for the IRS. She is incredibly sharp, and she focuses on working with women with small businesses. So for me, she's like absolutely perfect. I feel like she helps me keep my money together. And I think that is one of my really high recommendations, is to find an accountant early on that you like and that you like to work with. And I think, an accountant is like, a therapist, or it's like, going to a new church. You got to try out a few to see which one you like and which one would be a good fit for you. I tried someone before her who didn't end up being a good fit, and I only worked with him for 1 year, but I found her and I'll be with her forever. And I just want to point you to, her name is Nakandra Moran. I did a podcast episode with her where we talk about all things accounting for freelancers. I can find the link and I can like drop it in the chat before we hop off, or I'll find a way to get it to you. But
For sure.
she's fantastic. So I always recommend her. But, if not her, just someone who feels like a fit for where you are.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
To follow up on that, Laura, how did you do your research? Did you just type in accountants near me with speciality in small businesses and then scrolled, or is there a specific site that you look towards?
Yeah, I actually found her through the BFF network. So she was in the BFF network and we connected, and I love her so much. So I think you all are part of the Teamwrkr community, and I am now. And there are so many freelance communities out there. Within these communities, I think we have all the resources that we need, and I think tapping in and just putting out a call for like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I mean, I think we would be so surprised at what comes back. If not this person directly, then someone that they know that is also in that space that might be able to help us. So.
I love it. Within these communities, we have all we need.
We do.
Phil, I saw that you unmuted yourself for a second and then remuted yourself. So this is my personal, personal outreach.
It's just my way. Yeah. No, I was just going to indicate that, if anybody wants to share, and Laura, you can share any links, or you mentioned sort of a direct link to your accountant or things like that. Feel free to do that in the Slack group there. And that's great way to follow up, or your QR codes, things like that can all kind of go in there. That's a great way to communicate with our community. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else have any other questions out there? Anyone? Great. Well, thank you again, Laura. I really appreciate you doing this. It's great service to our community, and we'll go ahead, like I said, and get these things in the Slack group for folks to take a look at. And if anybody has any other questions, obviously follow up with Laura directly. She's got all her contact info has been presented, or we'll land in Slack. So really appreciate it, everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much for having me and for dealing with me on vacation.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
We are always big proponents of chasing joy and catching flights and all of it.